probably the number one thing I would suggest is if you're trying to figure out how to carry on growing, carry on building, carry on succeeding, the number one thing I would suggest that also was the hardest part for me was creating basically like a binary win-loss and holding, because I'm such a moving person and very dynamic and always changing, is what I found it very difficult to adhere to. But once I did, it made things an awful lot easier for me, was coming up with set principles. So set principles for almost everything that I do that I've set in stone was the most difficult thing for me to do, but also the most instrumental in allowing me to live an awful lot easier life and performing at a higher capacity. Because once you set these principles of, like how much you're going to save, for example, I think is a brilliant principle, how you go about doing business, how you set appointments, how you mention what you do, and just set these principles for everything. You build this structure. I often talk about building this foundation. Once you have this foundation set, then you can jump off and you can do different things, and you can have the capacity to do a million things at once, because you always know what you fall back on, and you always know where you are and what things you agree with and what things you don't. So I think is for anybody, number one piece of advice I give is to look at the principles that we're portraying within Carry On, and what we're saying, and then also to define and create your own. And they can be extremely specific to you. Like one that was extremely specific to me and very difficult for me to deal with was doing things based on how I feel after doing them, not while during. Because I realized a lot of the mistakes I was making is I was living in the moment, and I was living in the present, which I'm also a big believer of living in the present. But sometimes I was living a little bit too much in the present, and I wasn't considering my future self and how they'd have to deal with the aftermath of those decisions in that moment. So I think that was a big one for me, and a very difficult realization. I think is normally you find the things that you hate. Organization was another extremely difficult one for me, but is once I had, I always thought that talent could overcome preparation and organization, and then I found out, unfortunately, that it doesn't. I wasn't able to get around it. I wasn't able to get around the hard work. I wasn't able to get around these set principles. But I think it's the age-old stories we're told, right? Is hard work, and a lot of these talks on the internet going, well, you don't need to work hard. And yes, you don't need to work hard in the capacity that we used to work hard in the last generation or generations before that, but we still have to work very hard in different ways. And if anybody has found a way around that, I'd love to know it, but in all of my experience, I haven't seen it just yet. And then also as well is, would you want to accomplish stuff without putting your everything into it and going all in and then succeed? And I think there's a lovely feeling about that. And so all in all, I think the number one most important principle is to have your own principles and have this is who I am, this is what my business is, this is the way in which I do things, and these are my processes. And then once you have those, you can start to change them or shift them or come up with new ideas to make them better. But without having anything, you can't improve on. It's like playing baseball and not ever swinging, and not knowing and how to perfect the swing because you're never actually doing it. So you have to take a stance somewhere and draw a line in the sand and start going, this is how I operate, this is how I function, this is how my business works, this is how my life works. And then from there, you can get better and more effective. So once again, number one principle is always have principles.